like this and say, hey. You ready to come on back?
Yeah.
Okay, follow me. I'm gonna run to him over if he's not careful. Well, I'm Preston. I am Preston the Artist on Instagram. I am a hairstylist in Kitsap County, and I have been doing hair, I've been licensed since 2011. What I love about my job mostly is that every day is different. I enjoy being able to work with people, make them feel better, talk to them, get to know them, hear their stories. And what made me get into this job is actually years ago, I used to do hair and makeup for my friends that modeled, and it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed doing it. It was creative. And I had people in my life that said, wow, you're really good. You should go to school for that. So I did. So I actually started having medical issues in 2007, and they were mild and sporadic. And then by the time I was in beauty school, I started having more physical issues. So starting in beauty school was when I started my health journey, and it has taken me 15 years, 2 misdiagnoses, and a lot of specialists to actually get answers, and it took until last year to get final ones. I spent a lot of time going back and forth with doctors, and my first initial reactions was probably 5 years into the journey when I realized things were not going to get better, and they kept calling me a mystery. So my first initial reaction was a lot of stress and sadness and anger and a lot of grief. And as time went on, it's changed into a different process. This one's always a bitch. But it's okay because I'm talking to the company about changing it. For the money, and there's 25% of the US population that's disabled, you could make a lot of money if you made your products and everything accessible for consumers, as well as educators and stylists in general. Create it, and we will come buy it. With my disabilities that I have, to elaborate a little further, I have mast cell activation syndrome. So basically everyone has mast cells in their body. It's what's responsible for your anaphylaxis response. Mine overproduce the chemical for that. So I technically don't have any allergies, but my body will respond in an allergic reaction at times. Stress oftentimes induces that. So it can be stress, it can be other ailments, it can be the weather can change and I end up with hives, or I end up with skin flushing and itchiness. Sometimes I'll get scratchy throat. Thankfully, I have a more mild case of that, so I don't have to have an EpiPen. I don't go to the hospital regularly, but there are people that do. I also have postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. So that is basically my ANS, your autonomic nervous system, is responsible for all of your things in your body you don't think about. Heart rate, blood pressure, breathing, all of it, even your digestive system. So mine doesn't work appropriately. So basically, it's kind of like I'm a fainting goat. If I get stressed out, if I stand up for too long, a lot of times my heart rate will just spike and stay spiked. So it can be a lot. That one's probably my hardest one to deal with because being upright is what triggers it a lot of times. Heat can trigger it. So in the summertime when I try to get dressed, my heart rate goes into the 140s to 150s range. So that can be really difficult when I'm trying to work and trying to exist, especially in the summertime. And then my other big one that I have is I have hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So it's a connective tissue disorder. I have faulty collagen. So my tendons and ligaments are not very strong. So for me, that means I end up with injuries regularly. I've subluxated, which is a partial dislocation of multiple joints. I've done that to my neck. I've done that to both my shoulders, my hips, my ankles, toes, fingers, and a rib. And so a lot of times for me, that means having to be extra careful when I'm doing things, because even just standing up to go to bed is how I partially dislocated my neck. So I have to be especially careful when I'm doing the job that I do. So I've had to modify how I do that, my tools have to be lighter. I've been working with a partially dislocated shoulder since September. And so that's another one that can be difficult for me. So from day to day, it changes. I have what's called a dynamic disability. So there's times you'll see me that I can move and I'm doing okay. There's other times that my average is I'm a little slower, it's a little more cautious. You'll see me with my cane. And then there's days that are really bad, and that's where you'll see me with my rolling walker or sometimes even an ambulatory wheelchair. So that helps when I'm having the heart rate spikes or if I'm having issues with my hips subluxating, because when they're subluxed, I can't put weight on them and walk. So those things will adjust day to day, which can be really difficult. Trying to plan and map your life when you don't know how you're going to feel or how your body's going to react in the morning. So one of the tools that you'll see me with, especially when I'm out and about by myself, is my rollator wheelchair 2-in-1. This guy is my newest mobility aid and has been the most helpful. So this is in its, rolling walker stage. And the cool thing about this is it's got your standard hand brakes, but it also has these locking brakes. So that way I could, park it. It's that easy to park and then movable again. The cool thing I really like about this is the curb kick. So a lot of times there's no curb ramp in places, so being able to pop up onto the curb is really nice. And my other one didn't have that, so I used to have to put my knee on there and then risk hurting myself, so that makes my life a lot easier. Obviously you gotta have your cup holder for your coffee, because I used to spill my coffee everywhere all the time with my other one with no cup holder. So what I'll show you now is how easily this thing moves around my body. It's kind of like the suitcases where you can just boop, and then I can sit down and it's like comfy, cozy, easy peasy. The other cool thing that this guy does is I'll show you here. So locking it, that's how quick the back comes up. And then in the back, the footrests lock on. And then these guys just unlock and you turn it around and it becomes a wheelchair. So this is where it comes in handy for me. For example, on my last trip traveling alone, I had my hips subluxate, my POTS got worse, and so walking was not super feasible. So then I can switch it to this, and one of my friends was willing to push me wherever I needed to get to, and it made it a lot easier. So when I start to get really symptomatic, this became really handy. So this makes it easier for me to be able to travel places, go on adventures, do longer trips, because for the longest time I didn't go anywhere, I didn't do anything. I wasn't willing to use a mobility aid because of internalized ableism. I felt if I can't do it without one, maybe I just shouldn't be doing it, and that's silly. So I have since changed my tune on that and started advancing my mobility aid use. And now I'm going places like LA by myself, and I am going on adventures with friends, and I am doing all sorts of things. So sometimes you'll see me like just chilling in my chair in an event, because then I can just get in the chair and kick it for a little bit, and I can pop up the back and I got a place to sit. Then there's other times you'll see me with my cane. Got my sweet fold-up one. I have 3 total. I have this blue one, I have a black one, and then of course I have to have my purple with my spray painted glitter one. Everyone always asks how I like to color code them or modify them, and I do think that modifying them is important. It's something that gives it character, and it's not just a tool for medical use. It is kind of a part of like who we are and our needs, and so like my chair is a part of me, which is why it's important not to touch people's chairs without consent. But it is fun to kind of decorate them just like you would your body, or clothes, tattoos, piercings. So This fancy guy will definitely be getting an upgrade before I travel this summer to a big event. I'm thinking spray paint, glitter, and rhinestones perhaps. And my other rollator has now become the punk rock one, so it is getting covered in stickers. So that's my little handy dandy doodad. And like I said, most of the time you'll see me with a cane. If I know where I'm going, who I'm gonna be with, and I know that they're sitting areas, it's fine. I can usually manage. If I don't know, or if I'm going by myself and I don't think it's gonna be a safe situation, I bring this guy. So how I choose to keep going is reminding myself that we don't get to choose the deck we're handed in life, but we can reshuffle it. And so for me, I grew up with some really hard traumas in my childhood, and I had to learn to process those. And by going to therapy and learning those like coping skills, it's helped me handle the grief that I experience with my health, because a lot of times people don't realize that with disabilities, it is kind of a roller coaster of emotions. You end up going through grief more than just once. It's not just when you find out that you're disabled, because there's a lot of times, especially with dynamic disabilities, that when you start to get some improvement, you start feeling better and you get your life moving upward, all it takes is one getting the flu or having a stressful situation happen in your life, deal with outside grief, say someone passes away, all of a sudden that can put your body into a state of stress and it can tank all of your progress, which then leads you into that same point of grief. So for me, I had to learn how to process those emotions, honor them, let them pass, and remind myself that look at how far you've come, look at the things that you've done, even during the worst times. Like last year for me was one of the worst and hardest years that I've had to go through with testing and constant sickness, but I still managed to win awards and become an educator for a brand and travel and find ways to have the things that I wanted. So that's how I keep going, is I just remind myself, like, I'm doing the things that bring me joy. And yes, this stuff is hard. Yes, this stuff is constant, but we can choose to reshuffle our deck anytime. And like, it was just nice to be around a group of people that were really extra aware of it. And I even had someone ask me like how the airport did with it and made sure, like, did they get it here safely? I was like, they got it here safely. I did get treated like furniture at the airport at one point, so that was a little discouraging. Got run into multiple times in my wheelchair, and I'm like, I'm a person, and they didn't even acknowledge or say like sorry or anything. Oh, Jesus. And I did. I was like, it's fine. I'm not a couch. I'm definitely a person. But overall, like, I got there, and then everybody I was with was super aware of everything, super kind, and just to have people listen about the ideas that I had was really cool too. One looks straight. And other people even had advocated like for me. They noticed that our stage didn't have a ramp, and they were like, what if, look that way, what if Preston wanted to get on the stage? Like, and I did. I wanted to do karaoke. My POTS was acting up, but I wanted to do the tequila song. I had backup dancers. They were ready. Yeah. All I would have had to do was tequila. And it would have been magical. So like, my biggest goal is to help people who are disabled build their voice to advocate for themselves and others, but also to teach able-bodied folks to do that. Because a lot of times people don't notice until they notice. You can't know what you don't know. So for me, I've been with people where we've gone places that they didn't realize there wasn't a curb ramp somewhere. They've been there a million times, but until they were with me, with my wheels, they didn't notice. So those are the kinds of things that I hope to teach others, is learning accessible things, changing different stuff as far as doorknobs, stairs versus having a ramp, or having event spaces that, you know, you can rent a ramp, you can get that, but not everybody does. And so there's those different things that if you're highlighting, say, someone like me, and there's no ramp for a stage, how do I go up there and do my thing? Those are kinds of the stuff that I want to see people change. And I think that there's a lot of room for growth. So not only just brands being, you know, more inclusive, but people in general in society, because I think, so 25% of the US population is disabled. And a lot of people don't realize that about 20% of that is invisible illness, Because for me, up until the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years or so, I was actually dealing with all of this stuff without a mobility aid. It has gotten worse, but there are people that deal with these physical ailments and you can't see it. And so I think building the understanding of how much of the population is affected and the things that can help them would be really, really awesome to see. These new little ear inserts, and you can see they just sit right in there. And they actually, I can hear everything just fine, but they're kind of like how the rubber mats that they use at facilities to like tone down the extra sounds.
Yeah.
It's like that. So what it does, it takes down all the extra sounds, because with my ADHD and auditory processing, yeah, I'm the person that can hear the buzzing of like a computer that no one else hears. And then like someone's trying to talk to me and I'm like, do you not hear that buzzing? And then I'm getting like agitated and they're like, what buzzing are you talking about? And I'm like,
No.
and I have to like go digging underneath stuff and I'm like pushing things and they're like, what is she doing? And I'm just like squirreling behind something. Like, it's fine. It's just the computer monitor. I'm fine. So this actually helps by taking those sounds down. And like before I used to be able to hear the air, and like now I can hear that the air is on. But it's not my focus. Yeah. So I can hear everything just fine, but it helps take that down. So hopefully it helps with like the ADHD and issues that I have of hearing people chewing or crinkling or any of those things. Anything. Because I focus on all of those things, and people will be like, are you listening to what I'm saying? I'm like, I'm trying
so hard.
I'm trying
so hard.
But do you not hear that guy like 3 tables away clicking his fork? So not only will it continue to be difficult, but for me, it will continue to get worse. Like, that is something that I have to explain to people, is that this stuff will not get better for me, because as we age, our collagen already breaks down. So for me, a lot of the joint issues that I have are gonna get worse. Eventually, I will not be able to work behind the chair. And I know that. It's something that I've had to work through and kind of process. It's a hard one. It creates a lot of grief in the body, but at the same time, I had to kind of think and adapt, like, how do I continue to do things that bring me joy? Not necessarily like in that capacity, but what are the things in my life that bring me joy? For me, it's teaching. I love educating and I love helping others. I love coaching. So I know that as this progresses, I will lean into that role in my life more. And so I think that's a lot of it, is learning how to adapt, knowing that these things can get harder for people. That's like an important step for me. I think, for me, when it comes to, I did a presentation on ableism for educators, and I think one of the things that people don't realize that happen with disabled folks is things like internalized ableism. We deal with that ourselves, where we kind of get into this state of like punishing ourselves for needing accommodations, things like that, because society is the way it is a lot of the times. We think, well, I should be able to do that, or it's not that bad, I can handle it. And I have been guilty of that myself, and that's how I've actually ended up causing more harm to my own body, is because I've pushed myself too hard. So I think like teaching others to grant some patience and grace to one another, to see those things, and especially in the beauty industry, because our industry as a whole tends to focus on, we are here to take care of people, we're here to pump out, hair. We've spent generations not taking lunch breaks and sitting down to work, and you have to wear heels, you have to wear makeup, you have to do all of these things, which at the end of the day is really ableist in nature. Not everyone can do all of those things, but that doesn't mean that someone can't be successful behind the chair. I don't stand all the time. I don't really wear makeup to work, hardly ever. And I most certainly do not wear heels anymore. Yet I still ended up one of the top 3 hairstylists in the county, and I still am busy behind the chair, and I still do all of these successful things in our industry. So I think for me, one of the biggest things that I wish to see happen is changes in the industry as a whole, the stylists, and seeing compassion for those people, and reminding others that you don't have to fit a certain mold to be able to do certain jobs. That's part of why I do the things I do, is so that I can educate, not only like with doing hair, but educate stuff like this is because I think it's important. And that's part of why with being on a Pulp-Riot education team, is like I teach how to do hair, but they invited me to be a part of the diversity board. So now I sit on the diversity board and I talk to them about this stuff and how the industry needs to change, not just for stylists, but for consumers as well. Like, we have so many products and things like that are amazing products. You can't get them out. Like, you can't open the bottle. You can't squeeze the container. It's too hard. And we're told constantly as disabled folks, like, just buy something else or put it in a different container. It's like, why? Like, if I want to use something for its performance, why would I buy something else? And you're wasting time, money, and limited energy by transferring it to another container. And to act as if this doesn't affect everyday people is silly. And really, if you think about it, accessibility for disabled folks means accessibility for everyone. If you make packages accessible for someone like me with small fiber neuropathy in my hands, it's going to be accessible to someone who, say, breaks their hand and has to have surgery and they're healing. They're still going to need those accommodations and help, and it would benefit them. A ramp still benefits a mom with a stroller, like, just as it would benefit me in a wheelchair. So I think, like, that's a big thing that a lot of people don't realize, is that it's not just accommodating disabled folks, it's making it so that the world is more accessible for everyone, depending on your situation. Because I know people that didn't realize how many things were inaccessible until they had to have knee surgery and then they were on a scooter for 12 weeks. So it's all those little things that I think that people don't quite realize until they're in a position of having to realize it. And I'd love to see more people notice that stuff sooner and start creating those changes, because it doesn't take away from anything by making things accessible. A lot of learning with coping came into play for me, because there was a while there that it was terrible, and I spent a lot of tears and a lot of, like, anguish over it. And the more I realized that I got stressed out by it, the worse I felt. And I had to just go, okay, well, what can I do instead? And stay in the industry, because I don't want to leave the industry. There's just really nothing else out there that drives the appeal the same way, and I don't have the same passion for. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, well, why can't I still do education? Why can't I still do coaching? Why can't I still stay on a diversity board and help teach others to make changes for people like me who still have the capacity to work behind the chair, but maybe just not to the same extent that the average stylist can. And it's like, there's nothing that says I can't do any of those things. I just have to be different about how I approach it. It's my biggest goal, is I want to be able to see things change in real time. And I know that the only way to do that is to stay involved. And there's big hair shows that happen that you look and it's like, that stage doesn't have any stairs. Like, if I went to that, when I travel alone, I have to have my wheels. If I was to go up and do a presentation on a stage, like, that, it has to have a ramp. Like, why? And let's be real, like, girls with the too many drinks and too high of heels are probably going to do better with a ramp than they will with stairs anyways. So being able to stay in the industry to change those things is my overall goal.